On today's episode of This Week in Space, we're talking to Dr. Pascal Lee, planetary scientist, about testing Mars drills, new spacesuit designs, and more in the high Arctic. Stay with us.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 77, recorded on September 1st, 2023. Back to Mars with Pascal Lee. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Bitwarden. Get the open source password manager that can help you stay safe online. You can get started with a free Teams or Enterprise plan trial, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of This Week in Space, the Back to Mars edition. I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Astro Magazine. I'm here with the inseparable Tariq Malik, editor-in-chief at space.com. How are you today, Tariq?
I'm doing well, Rod. I'm doing well. So it's a long weekend as we're recording this. It's the Labor Day weekend, so we should all take a minute and relax, think more about space than we ever have before.
And we know we can always count on Tariq for the most astounding new headlines. We're very happy to have Dr. Pascal Lee back. Good of you to join us again, sir.
Thank you, Rod and Tariq. Hey, and while I'm at it, I always meant to say that I really love your show, and I'm really impressed by how many, how your audience is really growing. So, how many followers do you have now?
Oh, I don't actually know how many followers we have. I just know that we get fan mail, and so far, Tariq, we've never gotten one thumbs down.
Yeah.
Oh, now I've thrown down the gauntlet.
That's because we're so awesome. I heard, Pascal, that we have a 20 billion listeners. Is what I heard. And I'm gonna, someone smart told me that. So
it's a good show, and I listen to it religiously.
Well, Thank you. You just got back from yet another sortie to the Arctic, and I guess you were able to. You better have listened to us while you were up there, because you had the capability this year. Just say yeah. Absolutely.
I didn't, but I could have. Yeah.
Oh, ow. Okay. Well, let's move on with that. I have a space joke, and I don't think I've used this one, Tariq, but I wasn't sure, but it was so weird I just had to use it again. If this is a repeat, I apologize. It comes from listener Tucker Drake, who apparently thinks differently than I do, but most people do, so that's okay. Here's the story. As part of his tour on Earth, an alien was taken to see a concert by a symphony orchestra. After the concert, his host asked the alien what he thought of the concert. Alien: it sounded a lot like Gorflox. Host: is Gorflox a famous composer in your world? Alien: Gorflox is a brand of trash compactor. That didn't deserve a rim shot, but thank you, man. I appreciate it. That's the only one I have for this week. I went single because I figured it would take a lot of time, and yeah, well, we'll do better for next week. Speaking of doing better, audience,
is my new band name. So
it's on you. As always, we invite you to join Tariq's Torture Squad and send us your best or worst space joke. Don't fall down on the job. Be a good compatriot.
Is that a chair joke? Are you alluding to me falling off the chair?
Actually, no, but if you'd like to, we'd all enjoy it again. And please don't forget to do us a solid. Make sure to like, subscribe, and do all those other good podcast things, because we are here for you. All right, let's get some headlines done here.
Yes.
Blue Moon from...
Ooh, we have... Look at that. I like it.
For the sound effect, yeah.
I love it.
So for anybody listening who's my age or older, we tried to teletype and it just sounded completely illegible. So we decided to go with SOS instead. And I think it was a good decision. Good work, Ant. All right. From space.com, of course, we have a super duper whack-a-schnoodle blue moon. Tell us all about it.
Well,
try and convince me why it actually matters.
Well, it's the moon, Rod, right? We talked all about the moon last episode.
It's up there every night.
And I let everyone, it is, which is why it's amazing every month when there's a full moon. And then when there's a blue moon, which means that there were two full moons in August. That's even more exciting, because how often does that happen? Disclaimer, every few years there's a blue moon. But, and this is the caveat, it happened when the moon was at its closest point to the Earth for the month, which of course, as the lexicon will tell us now, is a supermoon. So we had a super blue moon this month, and it's not going to happen again until 2037. So for 14 more years.
Okay,
right?
now take a pause there.
Okay.
So this was the clickbait. We all saw it. Won't happen again until 2037. So what we won't have until 2037 specifically is a blue moon, second full moon of the month, with a super moon. So it won't meet those two characteristics, but we'll have a bunch of blue moons and a couple of super moons. A number of super moons well before 2037.
Why you got to yuck on my yum, Rod? Come on. It's a rare super blue moon. It's not going to happen again in this configuration for 14 years. Everything there are super moons next year. There's blue moons, I think, in 2025. Yes. Yeah. I admit that. There was not a super blue moon until 2037.
But apparently the world thinks it's pretty cool because there were a lot of people beating their feet to your door.
Oh, yeah. We had a banner day for that. I mean, just a quick, Ant was showing some of those photos. They're amazing, the photos that came out of the full moon where people were showing it. And people, we had a very successful run. We're really excited about it. I'm glad that a lot of people, it resonated with folks to go outside and look. I will admit, when I looked at the moon and took my picture, it still looked like the same size that it always looks like.
Exactly.
And that is one of the drawbacks, is that to the casual eye, it doesn't really look all that big. A lot of these amazing photos are taken with telephoto lenses zoomed in from pretty far away. So
just to be clear, supermoon is like 24,000 miles closer than its average or something like that.
Yeah, it's like 14% brighter.
So 14% brighter, and I guess a little larger in terms of visual angle.
Yeah.
But, not nearly as spectacular as the occasional harvest moon. What still really cooks my brain is I go out during a harvest moon, especially down at the marina, and it looks like it's, like 40 miles away, right? And yet you put your thumb up there and you can cover it. And then when it's overhead, you put your thumb up and it cover it. And that just doesn't work with the logical brain.
It doesn't. That's the moon illusion. And everyone can go up tonight and go try it, because the moon still looks full like a couple days after to our casual eyes. It is one of the strangest things. I like to use a pencil eraser. Does anyone use pencils now? Because you can...
all those wood things.
The eraser tip is very easy to compare with the size of the full moon when it's rising, and then again when it's in the sky, and you can see that it's the same size compared to that each time. It's really, really weird to do. But I digress.
You're kind of weird, but yeah.
The super. Wow.
Okay,
wow.
so sorry, but gotta crackle along here.
Yeah.
So. Once again, space.com, India's blue moon, India's moon rover.
It's gotcha.
Dodges a crater. Now, this thing's not exactly speeding along at 30 miles an hour. It's crawling very slowly.
No, yeah, it's driving extremely slowly, and the rover agrees.
Speaking
in
of
the background,
rover.
you see that?
Yeah.
So, all my headlines are moon related, but we're halfway through India's Chandrayaan-3 mission to the moon. The rover deployed. Everything's going well. It's healthy and whatnot. But what we have seen this week is just stunning video from the lander itself, showing the rover doing its little turns and moving to avoid a crater that it could pitch and fall into. And we just thought it was adorable, which is why I called it out this week. But it's just so refreshing to see this first for India just continue to go well. They've taken the temperature since we last talked on the surface of the lunar South Pole region. They've found sulfur in the dirt, the regolith, the soil, if you will, in the area. So they're making all of these discoveries already. And of course, once they get all of the data back on the ground in the next week or so, they'll probably have more. I hope that this rover and this lander could wake up after the winter. We'll see if they can survive that long. But just a quick status report on both Chandrayaan-3 and, I hope I'm not spoiling it, Russia's moon mission, which is our third headline for the day. So
Splat. Oh, sorry.
That's right.
That's
right.
So it's interesting. The Chandrayaan rover looks to be about roughly the size of Pathfinder.
Yeah, it looks like the teeny tiny Sojourner rover. You're right.
Yeah, like a microwave. And I was wondering about that. I was trying to look the other day to see if there was anything written about the possibilities of it reawakening after the lunar night and the cold. They're not, the ISRO, the Indian agency, isn't saying anything about that, but I was hoping to find some other conjecture, but I didn't.
Yeah, well, we can just keep our fingers crossed. Well, you know what's not going to wake up after the lunar night is Luna 25, Rod, which is our segue to the third headline.
I usually am the one saying nasties about the Russians.
No, I'm not. This, we talked to Noah Petro last episode about all of the great capabilities of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And as expected, and I think we even mentioned that in that episode, NASA's LRO spacecraft has spotted the last resting place of Luna 25. Basically, in the reconnaissance that it's done, it's passed over the moon and the crash site, and they can see the remains of the spacecraft there. So we know where it is now, if we ever want to go back and get it. But it was just a very interesting kind of visual aid that NASA released late this week. And so I thought that it'd be kind of a nice little bookend to what is a very moon-centric week this week.
Well, speaking of bookends, in the old days, both the U.S. and the Soviet Union used to fly their robotic spacecraft in pairs for just an event such as this. And maybe the Russians should start doing that again, flying them in 2s and 3s just to make sure. Yeah. I just had to sneak in that snarkiness. All right. And to close out, you already gave us the LRO spots the crash of Luna 25, right? Yeah,
I did. Sorry, I kind of stole your thunder there. So
you just mixed our headlines. All right. So we're going to move on, and the rest of this belongs to Dr. Lee, and we'll be right back after this short message. Don't go anywhere. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Bitwarden, the only open source cross-platform password manager anywhere, anytime. Security Now's Steve Gibson has even switched over, and so should you. With Bitwarden, all of your data in your vault is end-to-end encrypted, not just your passwords. In the summer of 2023, G2 Enterprise Grid Report, they solidified their position as the highest performing password manager for the enterprise, leaving competitors in the dust. Bitwarden protects your data and privacy by adding strong, randomly generated passwords for each account. And you can go further with the username generator, creating unique usernames for each account, or use any of the 5 integrated email alias services. You can transparently view all of Bitwarden's code available on GitHub. On top of being public to the world, Bitwarden also has professional third-party audits performed yearly, and the results get published on their website. Bitwarden is open source security that you can trust. Share private data securely with coworkers across departments or the entire company with fully customizable and adaptive plans. Bitwarden's Teams organization option is just $3 per month per user, while their enterprise organization plan is just $5 per month per user. Of course, individuals always get Bitwarden's basic free account for unlimited passwords, but you can upgrade anytime to a premium account for less than $1 a month, or bring the whole family with their family organization option to give up to 6 users premium features for only $3.33 a month. That's a bargain. And Bitwarden just released a new passwordless SSO feature. SSO with trusted devices lets users log into Bitwarden and decrypt their vault after using SSO on a registered trusted device. No master password needed. This new solution makes it even easier for enterprise users to stay safe and secure with Bitwarden. You can learn more about SSO with trusted devices at bitwarden.com/twit. At TWiT, we're fans of password managers. You can get started with Bitwarden's free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all your devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. Welcome back. Pascal, so good to see you again. So glad you made it back in one piece.
Thanks for having me again.
We'll get into the meat of this, but you got to spend a little more time around the Arctic Circle than you had planned this year, didn't you?
We were stuck up there actually in some sense, because we had planned to travel through the western route to get to the Arctic through a town in the Northwest Territories called Yellowknife. And Yellowknife was subject to wildfires this year.
Oh, wow.
And the whole town had to be evacuated. I'm not sure what the population of Yellowknife is, but it's, probably 10,000, if not 20,000 people. So it was a major thing to evacuate Yellowknife. And so we were stuck in the Arctic until we found a route through the eastern part of the Arctic through Iqaluit and Ottawa. Anyway, it's just travel woes, but it just goes to show that the Arctic is still not that well served that you could, that you have many options of cities to fly out towards.
So you came back the same way we did last year, right?
That's right. We came back through Ottawa. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with my dog, Apollo.
Which always makes flying more of an event than it would be otherwise. And I have to say, I mean, all jokes aside, I have never seen a dog that behaves as well as yours on an airplane. Gets on there, snuggles down between your knees, and just zonks out for as long as the flight is. And they're not always smooth flights. That was really something. All right, so let's continue on. I think we know enough about you now that we don't have to go through the whole resume. But you're a planetary scientist. You work at the SETI Institute. You started and operate the Mars Institute, and you built with your bare hands, grit, determination, and your molars, the Haughton-Mars Project
molars
base up on Mars. Yeah, you can just see him up there with, like pieces of seal leather between his teeth, tying off his tents. But this is a project that kind of sprung up out of the ground by raw willpower, which just amazes me even more having seen it. But
well,
remind us all what it is and what it's for.
It's been a team effort all along, but the Haughton-Mars Project is a field research project. We go up to this godforsaken place every summer, Devon Island, the largest uninhabited island on Earth. It's about the size of Croatia or West Virginia. It's even less populated than West Virginia.
Oh, there's a bunch of jokes that are just waiting to circle around, but please go ahead. I'm going to control myself. Yeah.
And I love West Virginia. It's beautiful. It's got radio telescopes. But Devon Island, on top of that, has a meteorite impact crater, Houghton Crater. It's 23 million years old. It's 20 kilometers in diameter. And just to give you a sense, a meteor crater in Arizona is only 1.2 kilometers in diameter, 0.8 miles. This thing is a 20-kilometer impact structure, and it's relatively recent, and it is beautifully preserved in this Arctic freezer on Devon Island, to the point where if it were smoldering, you could think that the impact just happened, but of course it's not smoldering anymore. It's 23 million years old, but it's very well preserved, and so we have. Just there, if I were to describe Devon Island, I sometimes say this, it's a barren, rocky, cold, dry, unvegetated, UV drenched, ground ice rich, impact scarred
wasteland.
piece of wasteland. And you might have thought,
sign me up for my next vacation. I think
you might have thought I just described Mars, but I've actually just described Devon Island, or vice versa. So it's to the point where there's even a whole conspiracy sort of theory out there that where people think that NASA's never been to Mars, but does all this Mars work on Devon Island, which is to some extent almost a compliment to how good an analog this place is. But it's not. Of course, NASA does go to Mars, and Devon is just a good analog for it. But I've been going up there for the past 25 years, and this particular summer was our 25th summer field campaign on Devon Island.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you for this project. And
that's longer than I was married. Oh, sorry.
What else to say? And every year we have two parts of the program. There's a science program where we do geology, biology, and we try to draw comparisons with Mars and more implications for Mars mostly, and then the moon as well. And then the other part of the program is exploration, where we're learning how to explore. We're testing hardware, robotic rovers, Mars airplanes, spacesuits, drills. So this year we tested a next-gen spacesuit and some technologies that go along with it, and also a robotic drill.
Do you call dibs on the spacesuits, Pascal, when you go? So they go, well, if anyone's going to try it, it's going to be me, right?
Oh, the whole purpose of bringing it to this location as opposed to doing your tests in a parking lot is precisely to put people who do field geology in it, or field exploration work in general, and put it through the motions of being really engaged in scientific field work. It's only then that you can really see to what extent your spacesuit is adequate or not in terms of its design. This year, the focus wasn't technically on the spacesuit structure itself. It was more on the IT system that Collins Aerospace, who's our industry collaborator and partner, who are coming up there to do their spacesuit tests every year with us. Collins is innovating and proposing some new IT technologies inside the suit. Suits, people might not know this, spacesuits historically have been relatively poor in terms of their computing capabilities, especially the electronics inside. And that's because in a pure oxygen environment of your suit, there's been a lot of reluctance from NASA and the astronaut office and everybody who does suits to have any chance of an electrical fire inside your suit.
Yeah.
So computers, head-up displays, things like that have traditionally not been included in suits. But now the technology has achieved enough maturity, computers that is, they're very stable, we understand how batteries operate. It is now time for, and then of course you can power things with very low voltage and amperages. So all of this combines to make the time ripe for there to be now IT systems inside the suit. So we were testing out for Collins as we were going about our field geology. We were providing feedback on various options for IT systems inside the suit. Inside and outside, I should say. And
can you expand a little bit what that looks like? I mean, are we talking a heads-up display inside the helmet or something?
There are head-up displays. There are, visual aids. I don't want to comment on the specifics of the tech because that's something that we help Collins protect as something that's proprietary for them. But suffice it to say that there was a range of options that were being examined, and some displays I think are more optimal for some applications. Other displays, for others. Ultimately, we'll have to probably come up with some compromise that works the best for all the anticipated applications we have. So applications may include navigating, displaying maps, figuring out where you are, where you want to go, have your on foot or rover traverse planned out for you, ahead of you. And that's, of course, an unpressurized rover because you'd be in a spacesuit. Or things like flying a robot, a drone, for example, and how would the imaging then of the drone be displayed inside the suit, while you're operating that. So there's a range of things. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, even just like monitoring the suit itself. Now they use that super fancy technology called a mirror to look at their gauges on their chest, right? So you could imagine all of that. So I'm just saying, Pascal, that if I had a spacesuit to test, I'd be wearing the spacesuit right now. I'd be wearing it at dinner. I'd be wearing it outside. I wouldn't just use it for scientific tests itself. But
I actually have an older generation Collins suit here that we tested in the Arctic in my office.
Oh, he's going to show us. Rod, he's going to show us.
You want to see it?
Yeah, let's take a little walk here. So for those of you not watching video, we're taking a stroll through Pascal's domain, and we're going to go visit his original spacesuit, which is a pretty cool moment. So,
and if memory serves, right, Rod, Collins has a NASA contract for spacesuits for Artemis too.
Yeah, both Axiom and Collins have NASA contracts for the Artemis program spacesuits. These are spacesuits for either the lunar surface or the new spacesuit for the space station and Gateway. So it's still a competitive environment between Axiom and Collins, but at the same time, everybody's sort of working towards the same goal, which is to support the Artemis program. This is actually not an Artemis suit. This is an older prototype of a rear entry suit with that fits on a suit port. So it's one of those things that you would don and doff by climbing into it directly from the inside of a habitat or a rover, pressurized rover. And so you see the backpack swings open like a refrigerator door, and you would then climb in, legs first, and then you insert your arms through these holes. I don't have the arms here, of course, or the legs. And then once you're inside, you or a mechanism closes the backpack behind you. And now you're sealed inside your spacesuit.
That is so cool.
I was so envious of our young lad who got to test the one you have up north up there last summer. And I remember looking at it thinking, maybe I could fit in it. No, there's no way. My diameter is just a little too large in the wrong places, but maybe one of these summers I'll be thin enough to sneak into one of your suits.
Yeah, well, I keep telling them to make a suit that's a little larger, even for myself. But we actually all got to try this year's suits. There were two, and the suit that you saw, Rod, is being flown back south here for the HMP Museum, and then we are keeping another suit up there, which we call Carl. The one that's being shipped is called Dave. The one that's up there is called Carl. And
so is Dave after Dave Bowman from 2001?
That works. It's actually after
let's go with that.
an engineer at Collins, but that works. And
I'm presuming Carl is after Dr. Sagan, correct?
Carl is in part after Dr. Sagan and also Carl's Jr., where we all gathered. After the first suit test in Oregon a couple years ago. And then this one that I have in my lab is called Ed. So it's EDC. So Carl is the one we are keeping up on Devon Island right now. And then the more advanced suit that we tested also this summer was Bravo. We don't have a name for it yet. But the one I just showed you is Ed. That's named after Ed Hodgson, who was a pioneering engineer at Hamilton Sunstrand, which is now Collins Aerospace. Ed just retired. He's still around. But we wanted to honor him with naming our suit after him.
Well, for Bravo, how about Biff? From Back to the Future. Let's just keep it simple.
Yeah, well,
I will be back with my next burning question as soon as we take this short break. Right back. So I've been having a burning desire to ask you this question. You got the Humvee running, which, well, at least the closest one. You've got two up there. And these are big, heavy, modified, hard-walled, full-back. This isn't the Humvee we think of when we see soldiers running around Iraq. This is more like an ambulance or a truck. A lot of room in there, a lot of utility to them, and you've had them up there for a number of years, but the yellow one at camp wasn't running, and it turned out to be easier than you thought, right?
The yellow one sprang a leak sometime in 2018, and we diagnosed the leak as being potentially due to some valve that was leaky, but there were other much more invasive fixes if it were the problem. So we went on a quest to get a replacement for the valve, and so I found it on eBay. I mean, it's not that easy these days to find Humvee parts. I mean, it's actually quite easy, but the factory no longer really sells Humvee parts.
Really?
At least not the ones that we were needing, basically. Which was okay. So we found this part for $1,895. Okay.
Plus $5,000 or $10,000 to fly it up there, right?
Well, there you go. So in 2018 and 19, when we went up there, we either didn't have time to do the fix or didn't need the Humvee that year, so we just left it. And then running the Humvee is a whole process. You got to fire up the whole vehicle and recharge the batteries. It takes a lot of time. And then we had COVID, and then COVID hit, so we didn't go back to Devon Island in 2020 or 2021. In 2022, we returned, but then the whole focus that year was to see how the base was doing. So we had repairs at base camp. We didn't take care of the Humvee that year. And so this year finally was time for Matt, our field engineer, and I to look into replacing that part. And sure enough, it fixed the problem. It stopped the leak. And now the yellow Humvee, which we got to Devon Island in the first place by driving it on sea ice across the Northwest Passage, it runs like a charm. And so we have two Humvees, like you said. This one is called the Icarian. The Icarian was a race of yellow, Martians in Edgar Rice Burroughs' Warlord of Mars, and they lived at the North Pole of Mars. Having fled wars in the South, and they lived in dome cities in the North Pole of Mars. So I thought it was appropriate to call this thing the Icarian. And the other one, the red Humvee, both are military ambulance Humvees with tall cabs in the back. So you've got litters, you can sleep inside, you can stand. It's relatively luxurious. And the other Humvee we have is a red one. We call that one the Mars one, and that one is at this time 17 kilometers southwest of camp.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Did you go visit it this year?
No, we did not go visit it this year. We plan to go next year.
Okay.
Yeah, probably will go with the yellow Humvee to extract it from its predicament. It's surrounded by very soft terrain, but it's on a safe embankment. So we'll try to. So one thought is to go rescue it, so to speak. The other thought is to actually do a field campaign that might, or separate campaign that would take advantage of frozen ground. So we would go at a different time of the year, and then the ground would have a stronger bearing strength, and we could continue our traverse with the red one. So there's some options that we're exploring. But these Humvees, we're using them as pressurized rover simulators. So they are vehicles that you can live inside, in shirt sleeves. You drive, you work, you eat, you even plan your next moves. And then when we carry spacesuits, we don them, before we go on EVAs from the vehicle. And so these are very good first order operational test beds for how to plan and operate pressurized rover traverses in the future.
And the yellow one has suit ports on the back, right?
We have removable suit ports, so they're installable on either one, on the red one or the yellow one. Yeah, we have. Yep.
I was going to ask about like the research for this one. We talked about the spacesuit testing, but I did want to just clarify if you have a red Humvee rover type, like analog, 17 kilometers from your base, does that mean that it got stuck there and then you had to walk all the way back a few years ago, or because it sounds like that'd be a really bad day on Mars if that happened?
Yeah. So no, in fact, we never take the big vehicle out on its own. It's always escorted by ATVs.
Okay.
So the ATVs do scouting. And we actually figure that on Mars, this is maybe how we would do pressurized rover traverses. First of all, you wouldn't go out with a single rover unless it's a known route that's considered to be safe and flagged. So if you're exploring new terrain, you would take out two pressurized rover, one being able to rescue the other in a predicament, and then they would both be escorted by a couple of ATVs, which would be robotic. You could have them on a trailer. And then if you need to do local exploration, you hop onto your ATV and then off you go. So I think that's really the ConOps, the concept of operations that we're aiming for. And that's the kind of stuff that comes from doing it in the field, because, on paper, you might not see the value of doing things this way, but once you're faced with the reality of having to actually plan a traverse with terrain that could trap the vehicle. On Mars, it wouldn't be soft ground. It could be sand, which is soft ground. But, on Devon, we don't have a lot of sand dunes. We have little mud pools. But on Mars, it could be sand dunes.
Which we've seen snag up rovers. I mean, Spirit and Opportunity stuck in stand. That was the end of that. So
absolutely,
Well, so I'm curious what new or ongoing research you had to pick up for the campaign that either stood out for you and the team, or that was really new for this 25th year up there at the habitat.
Yeah, the suit work to me is always super exciting, and it was one of the newest things because it's very relevant to the ongoing Artemis program. There's some urgency to get these technologies to mature, and then at the same time you're looking at how this might be laying the groundwork for future humans working on Mars, and so the joy that it gives me professionally and personally is this little glimpse into what it will be like possibly one day when you're actually, standing on Mars. Because once you don the suit, you are, cocooned inside. The engineers are fussing around, to set you up at first, but then you turn around and now you're faced with this landscape, and all you hear is the fan circulating the air in your suit, just like you would in an actual spacesuit. You're faced with a real, I mean, it's almost as close as it will get, to being on Mars and doing an EVA on Mars. So it's a powerful, it's a powerful moment to sort of work on these things. And so that's always a highlight. And then another thing that was done this year was we tested, and this is work led by Brian Glass at NASA Ames, but also Chris Zachney and Carter Fortuin at Honeybee Robotics. And Isabel King, who's also from Honeybee Robotics. So we had a team led by Brian come up to Devon Island this summer to HMP test the Trident drill. The Trident drill is the robotic drill that will be carried both on Viper, the robotic rover that will look for volatiles near the South Pole of the Moon, the NASA Viper mission, but also Intuitive Machines' Prime 1 mission, which will land very near Shackleton Crater near the South Pole of the Moon on the connecting ridge, and also drill. Both drills will drill down to about a meter or so, looking for ice in the lunar regolith. And so, as surprising as this might sound, but this drill was never tested in ice-rich ground.
Oh no.
And of course, it was built on a lot of experience from the team drilling into ice-rich ground, Honeybee Robotics in particular. But still, we all thought it was a good idea to test it in ice-rich ground, but not just any ice-rich ground. You want it to be in a very tough, sort of relevant substrate. And that we found at Haughton Crater, in the impact rubble at the crater. Once that thing that looks like really rough, gravel with all kinds of chunks of different sizes in it, and all of this is cemented by ice at minus 15 degrees C, which now behaves like rock, you really have a good analog for what you might be running into on the moon. I mean, still not as extreme, but drilling into the ice-rich regolith of Haughton Crater on Devon is usually considered to be like the ultimate field test before you can hope to perform well on an otherworldly, on an extraterrestrial regolith. So that was done this summer by Brian and his team, and big success. All the failure modes were tested. The drill recovered properly. It ran into all kinds of challenges. It behaved the right way, both in manual mode and robotic mode. So there's now high confidence that it will do well on the moon.
Oh, that's great.
So what would you compare the consistency of where you were doing your drill testing in terms of something most of us can understand? Is it like concrete? Is it like densely packed clay?
Yeah, so the rock itself, when you run into the bedrock of the fragmented material that was formed by the impact, that's like concrete. That's actually literally like concrete, with finer particles cementing chunky bits. And but when we're drilling in the topsoil, we're drilling into material that is already turned into a soil from that original concrete. So imagine now a sort of a much more fragmentary and loose material. However, it's loose only when the water is not frozen. When the water that essentially permeates all this material is frozen, and you encounter that at a depth of about a meter or so, now you're running into things that are really tough to drill into. And so this combination of a concrete-like material that has been loosened up by weathering but re-cemented by very cold ice is sort of what we think the lunar regolith might present us as one of its major challenges. And of course, the ice on the moon would be much colder. It would be, presumably at minus 50 C or minus 70 C or even lower than that. Mm-hmm. In any case, it's the type of thing that's very difficult to test in a lab. I mean, you can freeze Mars moon simulant, pour ice into it or water into it and let it freeze, but that's still not going to be as challenging as drilling into the Haughton impact breccia. Okay, and so Trident drill has passed the test of the Haughton impact breccia, and so I think the team can have great confidence it will do well on the moon.
Big round of applause for that. Now, here's what's important to me. Every night when I go to sleep, I say a little prayer that someday, some field season, I'll hear that a tardigrade, Tardigratus pylorhammus or something, has finally been named after me, as we discussed a year ago. Did you do any biological work this season?
Yes, we did. We first of all, we've been collecting samples in search for tardigrades, which are a form of extremophile. So that's why we're interested in them. Tardigrades are like, sort of like arthropods a little bit. They're more related to spiders than to insects. But they are extremely robust in terms of their ability to survive dryness, even radiation, even low pressure. Super hardy. I mean, their hardiness is of extraterrestrial sort of caliber, even though we don't think that they have these qualities because they are extraterrestrial. Of course, they are terrestrial bugs, but they seem to have qualities that would allow them to survive in space actually for quite a while. And sure enough, they have been surviving in space for quite a while. There've been tardigrades surviving on the space station, outside. So tardigrades are part of what we want to inventory on Devon Island to get a good sense of what extremophile species are living there. So we had a sampling campaign in 2019, another one in 2022 last year, but we didn't do any this year. So we're waiting for a student to be working on this project to come with us next year. And then we will have another campaign to collect tardigrades. And at some point, if we do find new species, we're going to have to name them. And yes, Rod, you are a candidate for us to name one of the water bears of Devon Island. That's the sort of common name of tardigrades, water bears.
Well, I'd rather
Rod is nice, but don't you think that Tariq rolls off the tongue a bit?
Tariq, yes. We're going to name the worms we find.
After Tariq, right? So
Tariq, you're going to be worms or sand fleas. Okay,
yeah, it would be.
Let you know.
It would be Tardigrada Tariqi.
I like it. See?
Okay, that's vibing with me. All right, well, we're going to take a short break, and we are going to be back with Dr. Lee's wish list. So don't go anywhere.
Well, Pascal, you mentioned, this was your 25th season at Devon Island, and I know that I assume that in that quarter century of field work, it's grown in capability and in scale over the years as you add new things or bring stuff back. And I'm curious now at this kind of stage, at having such a kind of like a mature field testing ground for the gear, for the science, for the experiments. What capabilities are you looking for next? Like if you could just, find a a Bill Gates for Devon Island to get to write off all those checks.
That's an invitation to our listeners.
That's
by
right.
the way. If
That's right.
anybody
Yeah,
wants to step up.
I heard he listens to the show along with those other 80 billion people. So what would you like to see added there for year 26 as we get I guess we're kind of entering a new kind of space era where you're testing private stuff for NASA, all sorts of stuff there.
Yep. Well, thank you for the beautiful question. We have several important assets up there. One is a base. So the base itself, we over time have to refresh our infrastructure. Power is number one. Power, we have generators that are somewhat aging. The biggest generator we had in the past was a 12 kilowatt generator, and that seemed to be able to meet all our needs. But lately we've been operating on a 7.5 kilowatt diesel generator, and they're starting to age. They're still running fine, but we would like to replace our diesel generators with bigger ones. But they don't have to be huge. And in fact, knowing how to manage power and live at a level of about 10 to 12 kilowatts is actually not a bad thing. In terms of how you might operate a base on the moon or Mars in the future. I mean, you need a lot more power on the moon and Mars to do things like air conditioning and life support. But in terms of just your basic needs for operating your science and your vehicles, that could be enough. So generators, we would like to find sugar daddies for buying a new round of big generators for our camp. But they have to still fit in a Twin Otter, which is sort of the bottleneck of us flying stuff in relatively affordably into camp. I mean, otherwise you can use helicopter slings, but that gets expensive very quickly.
Yeah.
The base camp itself, we also need some new tents. We have a 1 century approach to our base. We want it to last about a century. And so over time, we are trying to replace some of the more temporary structures like, less robust tents by things that are really quite robust and could actually survive because they are resilient to UV and the winds, things that could survive actually 100 years on Devon Island. So we're on a quest to acquire some new tents that are insulated, that are really winterized. Weather Haven is a company that makes lots of these very good tents. So we'd love to find a partner who would help us acquire some tents for our camp. Now, a more exciting maybe feature that we want to replace are our vehicles, our ATVs. ATVs are something that we use every day on Devon Island. And you have to understand, ATVs are these four-wheelers that we drive individually to roam around, and they're central to our science and exploration work. Now, ATVs are a lot more than just modes of transportation for us. I describe them as scientific instruments for us as well. I mean, just like a microscope allows you to see minerals up close, on the little rock section, ATVs take you to the rock outcrop. They also allow you to see things up close. It's just at a different scale. And so when we train people to handle our ATVs, we explain to them that they need to really baby them and treat them like they were scientific instruments, not just, rough get-arounds, that they can mistreat. But in any case, we have a fleet of about a dozen ATVs that now need to be replaced. And we still make them work, but it's taking more and more time to make them work, and they have more and more problems. So we want to replace them with a fleet of electric ATVs. And there are some manufacturers of electric ATVs in the US, in Canada, even in the UK. Ideally we have an American manufacturer who can somehow donate or lease a fleet of ATVs for, a few ATVs for us to replace our fleet over time. So I'm looking into that right now.
Yeah.
And electric ATVs would be really great because, first of all, they would be environmentally more friendly. Although, you still have to charge them with generators that are burning fuel. So that's sort of the same old electrical vehicle problem. But they would also really teach us how to operate, on the moon and Mars with battery powered vehicles. I mean, it would give you a greater sense of, you know how you have the range anxiety?
Yeah.
So range anxiety is a good thing to have in exploration because it teaches you how to be really careful in how you plan your traverses. So electric ATVs.
Is solar power not an option, Pascal, for all of this stuff, or is it just it's too much to maintain and build up there over time?
No, we could have a solar power system at camp. And in fact, this is something that we've scaled and studied. We had a solar power expert student come up with us one summer, and we've worked out a whole plan to set up a solar array up there. It would work well, and it could actually help us charge our electric vehicles. So an alternate to these diesel generators, which we could maybe start phasing out and use as a backup, we could also have a solar power plant up there. That is the only reason why I haven't jumped onto that as our immediate solution, is because that's going to take some time to set up. It's easily a 2 or 3 season thing, where the first season you do really a site preparation. The second season you bring up all the stuff and then you start assembling it, and then the third season you bring it online. It takes time, and but we have the real estate for that, for sure.
I was thinking you were mentioning electric ATVs, and those folks at Boston Dynamics have electric dogs, so that you wouldn't need a flesh and blood polar bear dog, and then if you get tired, you could just send it out.
Oh, heaven forfend! He can't leave Apollo at home.
No, but Apollo could stay
in
the base, comfortable inside, while the robot dog goes out. And those robot dogs can dance too. So if you're looking for some entertainment.
Yeah, but it wouldn't run ahead of Pascal like Apollo does and then circle around and nip at his heels and herd everybody down the path. Speaking of things that will stand up to wear and tear up there, do you happen to have the remnants of a battle flag sitting around you any place that I might recognize?
Yes. I don't have it with me. It's in my cargo bag. But we recovered your flag, Rod, the flag that you designed, with the War of the Worlds robot. And that flag was found, half of it was still flying, I think I should say. The other half is gone. It's just, I don't know where it is. Yeah. And the half that was flying was very faded by the UV and just the wind. I mean, the UV mostly.
Got it.
And it's funny because when we took it down, the last grommet that was still holding it, because it wasn't even flying as a half flag anymore. It was just a strip.
Yeah.
It was holding by one grommet, so it was just a horizontal piece of fabric. And when we brought that thing down, the grommet fell out.
Oh no!
So basically, it was at the end of its rope.
Okay, well, I didn't want to burn too much time on that. I was just curious.
I was going to say you say that it was the weathering, but I'm pretty sure it was the Martians not appreciating their depiction on your flag, Rod. Having their
why they were burning down people on Earth from high above. Before we run out of time, I'd like to hear about your glacier work this season, because you were on here not too long ago talking about your exciting findings, which you might want to just recap briefly, on Mars that you did from orbital observation, and now you've got some correlation on the ground, right?
Yeah. So, just to recap, earlier this year we announced finding something that I continue to pinch myself about, because it's really exciting. We found a glacier on Mars. That's not new. We've known of glaciers on Mars, past and present. But this one is near the equator at 7 degrees south. Now, that's unheard of.
7 degrees?
7 degrees south.
Wow.
It's essentially in the western part of Valles Marineris. It's on high ground. It's at high altitude, so colder temperatures somewhat, but still in the equatorial regions of Mars. And the reason why the glacier seems to still exist is because the ice itself is not exposed. We don't see ice, we just see salt. And the salt seems to be just thick enough to protect the glacier, presumably, because we are still seeing the fine scale structure of the glacier, crevasse fields, specific patterns of these crevasse fields that are typical of glaciers and present nowhere else in terrestrial nature. We see foliation, which is the folding, the twisting, and the mangling of the glacier upstream. We see moraine bands, which are layers of dirt that are brought up from the base of the glacier as the glacier essentially shears in its motion. So all of these very specific glacial features are found sitting there at the surface of Mars. But except that we don't see the ice, which makes sense, because if it were ice, the ice would sublimate, it wouldn't be stable. What we see is salt, and salt makes sense because that's what could protect ice from disappearing entirely. And so we're looking at another analog site where this situation seems to be present on Earth, which is in Bolivia, at the Salar, at Laguna Colorada in particular, where there are ancient chunks of glaciers that have drifted onto some of these salt lakes, are sitting in the middle of the salt lake, but are covered with salt. Windblown salt that over time has covered the glacier entirely to the point where the ice is still preserved. So now you're talking about last ice age ice that's still preserved on some of these high altitude salars in Bolivia. And that's exactly sort of what we're hypothesizing is happening on Mars, only at somewhat colder temperatures. So we want to go check these out in Bolivia. Here too, I'm happy to see if somebody wants to co-sponsor this with us and join us on this field expedition that we're planning loosely for the spring of next year. But
wait a minute. When are you doing that?
We're loosely, so that it's not in the way of the HMP field season in the Arctic. We're thinking of doing this in the southern summer. So sometime in the spring,
I think you've piqued Rod's interest.
Yeah.
It
doesn't take
like
much.
there. He's like, wait, hold on, Bolivia?
Who's going
Slars, you say? So.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm probably ahead of myself here because we haven't even approached the Bolivians about this. So, with respect, we plan to do this properly and contact local agencies for work, but that would be our interest. You bring about on this that we were looking for a landing site near the glacier with a student. Her name is Krista Heinemann. So with Krista, I've been looking for a landing site that would be much closer to this glacier than the one we had in this general region before. We had proposed this general region as a good place for landing humans, because if you drive east, you get into Valles Marineris, you can look for ancient life, and when you drive west, you go into the volcano country, and you can look for caves where you could find a living life. So it would be a strategic location scientifically for you to look for life on Mars, past and present. But the glacier is right there as well, which is incredible. I mean, that's actually how we found it, is by looking around at what else we could go check out. And now that we had found this glacier, we were looking for a good place that humans might eventually be able to land. I mean, you can land a robot almost anywhere at this point, even on pretty rough terrain. But humans, you still want a nice flat surface where they could set up a base, and so this is what Krista and I were looking for. And I'm happy to report that we found a good location, just a few kilometers, like 4 kilometers away from our glacier. And that's, like a nice flat area with very few dunes, and some little mounds behind which you could hide a nuclear reactor and also land a starship without being exposed to its sandblast. like a real nice little archipelago of hills and flat ground. It's pretty awesome. Right within a few kilometers of this glacier. So I guess I just wanted to share that. So we're not revealing the location yet. We're wanting to publish this properly with Krista, but it's very near our Mars glacier.
Well, you have to let us know when you do publish, because that'll be exciting to follow up on. So
yeah, and how cool is it to have your own landing zone on Mars? Pascal, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to remind people you do have a book out, and you have a number of paintings that you've done, and I bet you could probably tell us where we could go see all that stuff.
My book, this minute, is out of print, but you can still find it on Amazon. It's called Mission Mars. It's a children's book published by Scholastic. It's a field guide and a training guide for kids to become future Mars explorers. And then as far as my artwork, you can go to pascallee.net to look at it more closely. And if you are so inclined to actually acquire it, then you can go to sachiart.com.
And how about for the people out there that are burning to send you a couple $100,000 for your next field season, where would they reach you?
Please contact me by email, pascal.lee@marsinstitute.net. And then, actually the donation would probably be best used through the SETI Institute. So plee@seti.org, PLEE@seti.org. SETI Institute is the nonprofit that I work for and they're fantastic. So the funds would go towards our project.
Great.
Thank you.
Tariq, where can we find you in the Etherverse these days?
Well, as always, I am at space.com, where this weekend, as we're recording this episode, we're getting ready for the Crew 6 astronauts to return to Earth and India's launch of their Aditya L1 first solar probe. So that'll be really exciting to see. Stay tuned for that. You can find me on Twitter, on X, I guess. I keep saying Twitter, but whatever. I'm going to call Twitter at Tariq J. Malik. And if you like Fortnite videos and Star Trek game videos, you can find me on YouTube at Spacetron Plays. So
can I come be like fan number 17? How many followers do you have?
I have 44 followers, Rod.
Whoa! You are coming up in the world, my friend. All right. Well, of course, you can always find me at pylebooks.com, as always, and at astromagazine.com. And after today, soon, because I'm going to be taping in a couple of hours, yet another spin-off of William Shatner's Unexplained, which is debuting in a few months on the History Channel. That's all I know about it. But I'll have my large, tired, old-looking self up there answering burning questions about science. Don't forget to drop us a line at twis@twit.tv. That's TWIS at twit.tv. We welcome your comments, and we're getting more of them, so thank you. But send jokes. Love the fan mail, love the conversations, love the suggestions for topics. Please don't stop sending those, but don't forget to add a bad space joke at the end, because we count on you. And don't forget to check out space.com. The website's in the name, and the National Space Society at nss.org. Both are good places to scratch that space itch you might have. New episodes of this podcast published every Friday on your favorite podcatcher. So make sure to subscribe and like and tell your friends and tell your mom and do some skywriting and all that kind of stuff. And we appreciate that. Don't forget, you can get all the great programming of the TWiT network ad-free on Club TWiT, as well as some other extras only available there for just $7 a month. That's a bargain by any measure. And you can follow the TWiT Tech Podcast Network at TWiT on Twitter and on Facebook, and twit.tv on Instagram. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week.
Oh, hey, that's a really nice iPhone you have there. You totally picked the right color. Hey, since you do use an iPhone and maybe use an iPad or an Apple Watch or an Apple TV, well, you should check out iOS Today. It's a show that I, Micah Sargent, and my co-host Rosemary Orchard host every Tuesday right here on the TWiT network. It covers all things iOS, tvOS, HomePodOS, watchOS, iPadOS. It's all the OSs that Apple has on offer, and we love to give you tips and tricks about making the most of those devices, checking out great apps and services, and answering your tech questions. I hope you check it out.